Okay, hi everyone. We're looking at now the final paragraph of the essay, examine the concept, meaning idea, that free will is curtailed, meaning lessened or reduced by volition, which means a person's will. Now, we started off by looking at the reasons why people thought that the will was caused and therefore actually reduced our freedom. And we've started now in the last paragraph just to start to look at Kant and how he thinks the will can actually increase a person's freedom. So moving on to Kant, looked at this paragraph here, looking at saying how Kant was a compatibilist, therefore he thought free will and determinism are compatible, can work together. So we're now going to look at why, and why the will can actually cause us to be more free and does not curtail our freedom. I'm just going to read through it here and then we'll sum up what it means, what the essay is saying. So, as Richard Dean, an American academic, continues, and as for which is really true that humans are determined or that they're free, the answer is the truth and falsity, the concern of theoretical reason. And so from that standpoint, it is true that we're determined and false or free. But the true claim is that our actions are determined is irrelevant, and we are justified in taking ourselves to be free. What it's saying by saying that truth and falsity, the concern of theoretical reason, is that debating whether you're free or not is just an academic exercise. It's almost like a game. One person argues that we're free, one person argues that we're not, and it just becomes who's the clever of the two. When actually, what Kant thinks is in real life, it makes no sense to do that. In real life, to live practically, almost like get through life, it makes sense to act as if people are free. So the acting, saying that we're determined and not more responsible is irrelevant. You've got to act as if we're free. So Kant argued that it is the mind using reason which makes us free. If we act from feelings, then we are slaves to our passions. But because the human mind possesses the capacity for self-reflection, we can transcend our feelings and other causal determinants. So yes, if we're playing the academic game, we might be determined and not free. But what Kant's actually saying is the thing that actually tends to make us less free is our emotions, our passions, and we can get trapped and made less free by them. Now, the will, the mind, because it's rational, it allows us to step outside our emotions, step outside our passions, and make a rational choice, a rational decision. We can see things from other points of view than just our own. And because of this, the will, the mind, for Kant, is actually making us more free, because it allows us to step outside our emotions and step outside our passions and make a reasoned, objective, so unbiased decision. Therefore, in answering the question, it is our mind, our reason, our volition, again meaning will, which enables us to make free decisions and actually increases our freedom. Now, just to be clear here, it does seem that there are similarities between C.A. Campbell here, as in libertarianism, and Kant, because the moral self allows you to step outside your personality and do the right thing in the same way that your will allows you to step outside your emotions and do the right thing. However, the key difference is that Campbell is an incompatibilist, so he thinks that the moral self is not caused in any way, uncaused cause. Incompatibilist, free will terms is not compatible. Kant thinks the opposite. So it is possible that your will is caused. In fact, it makes more sense because it's not random. Therefore, he thinks free will and determinism are compatible, can work together. So although there is similarities between the two, they have one major difference. So furthermore, going on here, notice that Kant saw freedom as something that is very different from randomness and as something absolutely compatible with the laws of the universe. So it makes sense that it works alongside Newton's physics, for example. Kant believed in the autonomy of the will. Autonomy here means independence. So the will is independent. Again, because it's independent, it allows us to step outside of emotions, etc. The human will is autonomous in the sense that we are capable of acting from reason and not from other influences like anger or lust. It also allows you, because you're using your brain and not emotion, to ignore the feelings of others if they're not rational. The good will is one that acts out of duty. This belief in the autonomy of the will is an assumption in Kantian ethics. So Kant knows he can't prove that we're free or not, so he assumes it. Okay, he doesn't want an academic debate about it. He wants something that's practical, of use in your life. So he assumes that we're free. He cannot prove it. It's something he requires in order to argue for moral responsibility. So practically, we need to have moral responsibility. So we need to put people in prison for doing things that are wrong because it protects society. So I'll repeat that again. He cannot prove it. It is something he requires in order to argue for moral responsibility and the ability of you and me to choose the good. It is our own reflection on morality which generates our motivation to choose to act ethically. So it's by looking and evaluating our own behaviour that allows us to try and be good. The only constraint on our freedom in Kantian ethics is our reason. Kant argued that we should blame, for example, a child abuser even if we find out on investigation that the person themselves was abused of a child. If there's something in your life that causes you to act in a certain way, so for example, if you were violent and then if someone was violent to you that causes you to be violent, that's looking at things from your own point of view, maybe from emotion. Now, what Kant's saying here is if you apply reason, if you apply the will, if you apply rationality, if you're rational, then you can step outside and say, look, even though you've had these terrible experiences, it's not an excuse for you doing it yourself, because if you apply reason to it, you can see that it's wrong. Now, even if one believes that action is determined by these causes, one nonetheless blames the agent. So it's basically still the person's fault if you apply reason, if you apply the will. This blame is grounded on the law of reason, which regards reason as a cause that, regardless of all empirical conditions just named, could have and ought to have determined the conduct of the person to be other than it is. So because you've got your mind, your reason, you're capable of stepping outside your background, your emotions, your behaviour, and doing the right thing. To summarise, in effect, Kant establishes that although he cannot prove we are free and not determined, he essentially is arguing that in trying to find this out is a waste of time. In order to be practical, we must act as if we are free and therefore must praise moral behaviour and blame criminals for their crimes. An acceptance that humans are not free and not responsible for their behaviour would bring chaos to society. We must act, therefore, as if we are free. In this mindset is our will, our reason, and our mind, which allows us to ignore our emotions and reflect on our behaviour. Therefore, from this practical position, Kant succeeds in demonstrating that our volition does not reduce our freedom. In fact, it does the opposite. To return to Pinker, who would seem at first sight to see our will as reducing our freedom, parts of his theory could actually support Kant. E.g., he concludes that evolution might, for example, predispose men to violence or to sleeping around, but this does not excuse, necessitate, or excuse such behaviour. So another thing is your will allows you to do is not only step outside your emotions, but perhaps also your biology. A moral sense is innate in us, and so is as real for us as if it were decreed by the Almighty. So it's that moral sense in us, the will, that actually increases our freedom. I hope that makes sense. Thanks for listening. Any questions at stm_re or email me at school. Thanks now.